I'm Alexa, our host of the Kli'nishen's Atelier. I'm really excited to have Abby Wilson speaking with us today about her private practice. And she's licensed in Texas and Florida, and I'll kind of let her share a little more about herself.
Yeah, I'm Abby. Yeah, work with women, mainly young professional women based in Texas. I have maybe one client in Florida, but I'd say 95% of my clients are in Houston because I lived there for so long. And I really specialize in women who are navigating attachment trauma and relationship struggles and quarter life. I do a lot of work around existential crisis type of stuff and quarter life.
I was like, that's actually interesting because we don't always think about that, but I do feel like that could be a big shift. You're finishing school, you're trying to, you've been in probably school your whole life, and now you're like, how do I actually live in the real world? So I thought that was pretty unique because I've never heard of that before until I read it on your website. I was like, that actually makes sense.
Yeah, I actually discovered my niche because, and I think a lot of people say this, often it's a younger version of yourself. So I found that I really loved working with people who reminded me of myself when I was around like 23, 24, 25. And I'd say the main age range of my clients is anywhere from like 26 to 36, but it's the quarter life stuff. It can come up at really any age, quarter to midlife. That's how I discovered my niche. Was I just felt like on a personal level, I could really relate to it.
No, I really like that. Start by asking, can you tell us about your journey into private practice and what made you decide to go fully private pay, cash pay?
Yeah. So my journey into private practice, I worked for other places for 4 years after grad school. So I was in a group practice for the last 2 years, and that was really great for me to hone in on my skills as a therapist and discover who I loved working with. After that 2 years, I just started to get this like itch of just really wanting to be my own boss and feeling very confident in myself as a therapist. And so I had that kind of covered, like that foundation, and just figured, well, now I have the space and the energy to master the business side of things. You need to build a private practice. That's how my decision to go into private practice started, was just working for somebody else and then deciding, yeah, I'd like to learn how to do this myself and be my own boss and have the freedom and flexibility that comes with being in private practice. So I made the leap, and I decided to be private pay because I just heard so many nightmare things about working with insurance. The group practice that I worked for was fully private pay. So I think I knew that the market was out there, that it was doable. And I just had this mindset of like, if other people are doing it, there's no reason as to why I can't do it. I also went into it of like, failure is not an option. I'm going to do, everything it takes to make this work because it's my dream and I want to make it a reality. So I had a very much of an abundance mindset of like, I know that there are people out there who want to work with me, who will benefit from working with me, and who will pay full fee for my services.
I love that. Something that I actually want to bring up, which especially kind of tying in with that abundant mindset, but before you even said that, I was thinking, since you do have this niche of a quarter life, right? The 25, 24, someone might think, oh, well, they may not have the funds to pay cash pay, right? And so tell me a little bit about people that may have some negative talk at times, that may want to say, well, someone at that age group, maybe they don't have the funds to pay cash pay. Maybe they want to use insurance. How would you say you maybe overcame some of those challenges if you had them?
Yeah, I have seen that in the Facebook groups of like, make sure that your niche is a population that could afford those services. And I've seen feedback of like young women in that age range, that's not realistic to target because they wouldn't be able to pay for the services. And that's not true. That might be true for a large portion of the population, but that's not true for everybody. Most of my clients, they're high functioning, they make a good income. And they either prioritize paying for therapy. They have an HSA fund that they can use. I do have some clients who their parents pay for their therapy, which is, really nice. But I've found that it's not that I need everybody to be able to afford my services. I just need the amount of clients that I want to see a week. And that's anywhere from 12 to 18 clients a week. So I'm not targeting everybody in the state of Texas. I really just need enough clients to keep my practice sustainable. And it has not been a problem. Yeah, I've found consistently over the last 3 years that people are happy to pay my fee. And when I raise my fee every year because of inflation and advancements in training, no one's ever had a problem with it.
I really love that because yes, you don't have to service everyone. The fact that you've had consistent clients for 3 years and the fact that you've been able to up your rates and feel comfortable about it, like that is also a testament that you don't have to be afraid to grow and that you still have people that see the value in what you bring. And I think sometimes people don't see their value and sometimes you don't see the value that you have. And when you don't see the value, other people don't see it. And that's kind of the reality. I remember when I was younger, I was in my early 20s when I started my business, and I would just kind of give away my time and effort, and I'd become very frustrated and angry within myself. Now, I was always very professional, so no one saw how frustrated and angry I was. But it wasn't until years later when I finally stopped caring and I was like, this is my price. This is what I feel my time is worth. And people would tell me, oh, someone can do it for X amount. I'm like, if they can give you the same quality for that, please go hire them. I literally got to a point where I started saying that if you can get the same quality for that price, by all means, please go hire them. You'd be surprised how many times people came back and hired me, and I'd give them tips. Like if I go, I would love to think I'm the only person you're interviewing, but here are some things you can ask when you're interviewing others and just things to keep in mind. And the fact that I was like giving them tips to interview other people, I think kind of confused them and set them back. But it comes down to knowing your value, knowing who you want to work with, and understanding you don't have to work with everyone. And there's people that knowing your niche really helps you kind of weed out people that you're not happy working with. There was something my dad told me years ago that I never forgot. He used to tell me, one day you're going to learn that not every transaction you get is worth it, because sometimes you spend more time just to make that deal work, that it's not worth your mental health. And I didn't get that till years later. Learn to set your boundaries over time.
Yeah, I think that can happen with therapists too, where like there's that scarcity mindset. So they feel like they have to accept any client that comes into the door, or they negotiate their fees with clients when things are slower. And I've definitely been tempted to do that when I experience the ebb in private practice. But every time it picks back up again, I get that reassurance of like, I don't need to sacrifice my values and compromise like, yeah, my vision, just because I get a little bit nervous every once in a while.
I do have one question. So you say you've had a pretty consistent practice for 3 years. Does that mean, do you continue taking on new clients? Do you have like a wait list? Can you tell me a little bit about that process?
Yeah. So the only time I had a wait list was actually, it's weird because it was like 2 months after I started my private practice. And I think it was the aftermath of COVID. I started my practice in 2021, and I heard that COVID was like the busiest year for so many therapists. So I think it was a little bit of just, yeah, from that year and the year after. So it was maybe like 2 months where I wasn't accepting new clients. But ever since then, I've been consistently accepting new clients. I haven't been full enough to like have a wait list or even have to refer out, just because I describe it as like comfortably full. Like there's space for a few new clients every month. But if I started to get maybe twice as many referrals as I was getting now, or as I get now, then I would need to start referring out. So I think I've really found this flow that works where I'm able to accept new clients consistently, especially because people will taper down to biweekly, monthly, as needed sessions. But yeah, I've been consistently accepting new clients, but also consistently and comfortably full, if that makes sense.
No, that absolutely makes sense. So you mentioned identifying your niche was a key strategy. Once you identified your niche, how did you tailor your messaging and services to appeal specifically to that target audience?
Yeah, that was tricky. I looked at a bunch of different therapist websites and coaches websites to see, just to get some examples. And I just really thought about, like, what would I want to hear if I were a client looking for a therapist? What would stand out to me? And then I started to listen to when I would get new clients or new requests for consultations with me, for the phone consultations. I would start to listen to like what stood out about my profile, to my clients, and a lot of them started to say, when I read the word quarter life, like, that's exactly what I'm going through. Or when I read that you work with high functioning adults, like, that's me. So I just started to listen to those themes and what really resonated with people. And yeah, just speaking to that on my website, and also making sure to add a little bit of what they can expect it to feel like working with me, because I'm very relational. And so I wanted to add a touch of that in there.
Let's talk a little bit about your website. What elements do you consider crucial for therapist websites to effectively speak to their ideal patients slash clients?
Mm. I'd say something that I learned with my research with marketing is the hero section, which I didn't know what that was at first, but apparently that's the very top of your website, the first thing that they see. And that within like 5 or 10 seconds, they should know who you work with, where you work, or where you are. Um, and something else, I can't remember, but they should really have like a solid idea of who you work with and if they can work with you, and if you're accepting new clients. So I really made sure to have that, like right when they click on there, yeah, to make sure that it appeals to them. So I'd say, yeah, what you specialize in, who you've worked with, the population that you work with, your approach to therapy, like what they could expect working with you, and I think what your fee is. I think it's important to be transparent with your fee on your website so that, they're not wasting time with a phone consultation if they can't even afford your fee or if they're looking to use insurance.
I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So obviously, I make websites for a living and I love everything you said. So for me, the way I like to explain websites is kind of like your summary page, right? It's where you're going to funnel everyone through different parts of your site. So I always like to say there's two types of people that come to your site. You have your analytical mind that likes to read everything. And then you have kind of like your more creative mind, your person, your bullet point person. Like for me, it's like, give me the bullet points, tell me what you're going to charge me because I want to make a quick decision. And especially if you're cash pay, and this is something that the DPC doctors do, and they do it well. They're very transparent with their pricing. That's actually what their whole model is based on. They are membership based, which is a little different. Obviously, they get monthly memberships, but knowing what the fee is, like, what are you going to charge me? So I can immediately decide, do I want to work with you? Not only, like you said, are you cutting down on wasted consultation time and answering? And that was actually the same with me with website. Like, even though I'm not a therapist or a doctor, I would literally was tired of taking calls from people that wanted $200-300 websites. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm not the person. Like, this is not what you're willing to invest. Then we're maybe not the best fit. So it really does save you a lot of time. And sometimes I do, when people do call me, I kind of assume they've looked at the pricing because it literally says pricing on my website. Now, sometimes they don't look at it. I do kind of go through it. But at the same time, I definitely do agree. If you're offering a cash pay price, right? If that is your model, I think that's actually really great advice. If you're offering, an hourly fee or whatnot, that should definitely be on there. I think it's great advice.
Yeah, thank you. And I don't think it's necessary to have an FAQ section, but I made sure to put that on there just in case. Like, I just think it's helpful if somebody does have that analytical mind and they want to read through everything and get all of those questions answered easily before talking to me, they have all the information. Like they know my fee, they know that I'm an out-of-network provider, which I state in my FAQ and on my contact page. But I also list out, like, because I'm an out-of-network provider, you can check with your insurance to see if you get any reimbursement from them. Here are the questions to ask your insurance, and I can provide a super bill that you would give to them. So I just like to be really clear of like what they can expect, and they can make an informed decision.
I think that's great. It saves you also from answering repetitive questions over and over. It also helps people understand, especially if they do have insurance, they may not understand why you don't take insurance, because people may not understand, like, why doesn't she take my insurance? Because people may assume every single person that works in healthcare takes insurance, and that's not true. So I think that really does help kind of answer some of those questions ahead of time. Or helps them make a decision, like you said, an informed decision, if you're the right fit for them or not. You mentioned that SEO has been crucial for your success, with 85 to 90% of your clients finding you through Google. Can you tell us about your SEO journey? Did you manage it yourself or did you hire a professional?
I'm happy to talk about SEO. I have a love-hate relationship with SEO because it has been crucial to my success, and it can be frustrating and it can be a lot of work. But I learned all of it on my own. So I don't consider myself an expert in SEO because there's still so much that goes over my head, and it can be very complicated when you really get into the thick of it. But there are so many resources online. There are books about SEO. You don't have to read books on SEO, but I did read a book all about SEO just because I really wanted to strengthen it. And I don't know, I was just very determined to like do as much as I could on my own and see how that worked. And it's worked really well. So I think there's a lot of like basic stuff that you can do with SEO, like having a Google My Business and a physical address so that if people look up, if they Google therapist near me, your website comes to the top of the page. And then keywords, that's important. So if people Google therapist in Houston for women or anxiety therapist in Houston, I think I show up pretty high on there, as well as online therapist in Houston. So yeah, I did all of the research on my own and even check on the back end, like how much organic traffic I get a month and what words people are searching to find me.
That's really awesome. You're completely virtual, correct?
Yes, fully virtual.
Okay, I think that's important to state that you run a completely virtual practice. And the other thing I wanted to ask, what's the name of that book that you read that was crucial to your success with SEO?
I think that one was SEO for Dummies. It was like a very basic, like good starting point.
Okay. What did that also look like? Were you writing blogs? Were you trying to get featured anywhere? Were you like writing for other journalists? Can you tell me a little more of what that journey looked like?
Sure. Yeah. And so there were a lot of things that I did. So I did write blogs. I don't know how effective the blogs were, but I do know that I have 2 blogs that gain a lot of traction every month, which is important to SEO. I do have a few blogs that gained a lot of traction, which I think really helped. And then being featured, yes, that I really prioritized that for a while. There's something called Help a Reporter Out. And there's also a website called Quoted, and it's basically people who are journalists who are looking for experts to quote in articles. So then the experts will reach out to the journalists and say, I'm a mental health therapist. I specialize in anxiety with women. I'd be happy to provide insight for your story. And so then the journalist will reach back out and you'll either answer questions through email for them or touch base on the phone. And so being featured in those articles, a lot of those articles will provide a backlink to your website, and that helps build SEO. So it helps build what we call domain authority. So then Google knows like, okay, this website is relevant. It's important because other websites like Bustle or a few others like Fitbit, they're linking back to this website. So it must be important. And it's not just low quality websites or random websites. It's actually like websites that have a very high domain authority.
Did you build your own website or did you have someone build your website?
I built my own website, but I bought a template. So I used Squarespace to build my website, and I eventually purchased a template because I just wanted like fonts and something that was built out just that, yeah, helped me kind of with the placement of everything. So I built it myself, but the template, I bought the template and then tweaked that a bit and played around with that a lot.
No, that's helpful. I was just curious platform that you used, but people had this misconception that WordPress was the only way you could go to really build a strong SEO presence. And that wasn't necessarily true because I've always built on Wix since 2009. Actually, it's where I started. So I'm like totally Wix biased. But I was able to rank on Wix on the first page of Google, actually in the first spot. So I used to try to explain to people that you didn't have to be on WordPress to rank for SEO because there's so much more that goes into the back end of SEO. People sometimes think, oh, it's just writing a blog or that it's just filling out the SEO setup on each page. But like you said, there's so much more that goes into it, like getting featured in other places, being the backlinks and everything. So I was just curious the platform because I don't want people to think this misconception that they have to be on WordPress to have a successful website.
Right. Yeah, I think people can get caught up on that. And I know I've heard there's like a few platforms that are better for SEO, but I don't know much about that. I just started with Squarespace and kept it.
And it obviously has worked well.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
When you first started, did you experiment with any other marketing strategies that didn't work as well? What lessons did you learn from those experiences?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I wish I had known like how much time I would waste. And it was all a learning experience. So I don't regret any of it. But what did not work was just going to doctor's offices and giving them my business card. Um, there's one doctor that I did speak to on the phone, and she's a like concierge practice, and she has referred clients to me over the years. But that's the only time where that's worked. So I think it can be like hit or miss, but I did it a lot early on. I just like drove around and went to all of these different doctors' offices and handed out my business cards, and I never got a referral from any of them. So I found going to doctor's offices, that was a complete waste of
Hmm.
time.
Yeah. You always hear pick something, right, and invest your time in that. And then when it's doing well, you can invest your time in the next thing. Don't try to invest your time in several different things at first because then you're not really consistent. And so the idea is to be consistent at first. So you decided you picked, I'm going to be really good at doing the SEO and I'm going to invest my time in building that. Obviously, you're reaping the rewards and you're at a point where you haven't felt like you needed to invest in something else. Maybe you invested in the SEO and had you not seen the fruits of that, maybe you would have had to go a different route, but you haven't needed to. So thankfully you saw the rewards of that investment.
Yes, exactly. I think that's really good advice that I got early on was like, don't spread yourself thin trying to do everything. Just focus on a few things and really dive deep into those marketing or networking pieces, but don't spread yourself thin trying to do everything.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part sometimes. When you first start a business, it's kind of going back to what we said. We kind of want to either help everyone or we need money now. And so we kind of try to do too much. And so then we end up not doing anything because we're just all over the place. And it can be tough sometimes because we're trying to figure out what's working and what's not working. And so I always say if you can have a way of measuring or having some kind of analytics, that can be really helpful. Like kind of paying attention, where are leads coming from? What is working? Okay, this is working. Then maybe I need to focus on this and invest my time in this. The beginning might be a little hard because you're not really sure what's going to work. Like you said, you spent all this time going to the doctor's offices. You're like, okay, I'm not getting anything, but you didn't quit. You're like, okay, how long did you do that, would you say?
Probably like probably a month maybe. And then I tried it again.
And you went like every day?
Yeah. And then I tried it again like 6 months later, and I figured like, well, maybe this is just planting seeds, which a lot of it is like you're planting seeds, and some of that might pay off much later on. So I think it can be good to try things out because you never know. But right, like I didn't see the rewards after, 6 months. So it was like, okay, that's not something that I'm going to continue to even attempt.
Invest in. Yeah, I normally say give it like 6 months to 12 months, depending. Like if you're doing something online, sometimes it's 6 to 12 months. If you were driving around for a month, 4 days a week, I mean, that's a pretty big investment already. So you kind of have to see like what's working, not working. Like you have to kind of figure out what works for you and how does your niche respond and kind of measuring that, right? You realize that that's not really working for you. It's like kind of a measuring system. Like, where are people coming from? What's my open rate? Are people really engaging with me? And if not, then you have to retire that system, right? And so that's just really true for any type of business. You have to see what works for you and your niche. Maybe SEO doesn't work well for someone that needs to do boots on the ground selling. Maybe SEO and Google Ads could be great for someone that is a virtual practice. You know what I mean? So it goes back to your strategy and who your niche is and who you're trying to serve. For therapists that are just starting their private pay journey, what would you say are the top 3 marketing actions they should prioritize?
The top 3, I'd say number 1, know what your niche is. Discover who you really feel passionate about working with so that you can tailor your marketing to that niche. The second tip, I'd say just like allowing yourself to be seen and really overcoming that fear of like putting yourself out there. You have to put yourself out there, whether that's through social media or your website or cold calling other providers. That's how I made several of my therapist friends too. I just called or emailed them and got in touch with them. And then they invited me to their consultation group that they're a part of. And I built community through that. So I'd say not being afraid to be seen in whatever way that is, because that's so important for marketing. Your clients have to be able to find you, and you have to be seen for them to find you. The third tip, I'd say, yeah, don't be afraid to pivot. Like, figure out what you enjoy doing when it comes to marketing. If you enjoy connecting with other people, if you really enjoy socializing, then networking might be great for you. Like taking other therapists out for coffee or attending the networking events for therapists. That might be a great way. If you do not enjoy doing that, you don't have to necessarily do that. You can learn about SEO or social media. So I think it's really figuring out, like, based on your personality, what type of marketing would you most enjoy? And don't be afraid to try new things and pivot if you find that you're really not liking it.
And finally, what advice would you give to therapists who are hesitant about transitioning to private pay model due to marketing concerns?
I would say if it's due to marketing concerns, I would say knowing that it's doable. It's just about investing the time and energy to do it. It's not the question of like, is it possible? It's the question of, how long might it take for you to be successful with that? The people are out there who are willing to pay. The population is out there, and it's really figuring out what marketing tactics work. But just knowing that it's doable, that it's possible, I think that can give a lot of hope. I think a lot of times as therapists, we're helpers, and we're so empathetic, and we want to be able to help people, but we're not. We have to help ourselves. We have to have financial health to really be able to show up as our best self. So I think a lot of therapists feel bad about charging private pay or charging premium fees. So I think that can be a lot of times your own work to kind of sort through and address when it's, money mindset stuff, recognizing that you deserve to be paid well and you deserve to have a good life. And that's possible to be financially secure as a therapist.
Yeah. I think that's interesting. So I think that's a theme, right? Because the doctor interviewed for episode 2 said something similar. Doctors just want to help. Therapists just want to help. And I had a struggle myself when I was younger charging, because I genuinely loved building brands. I loved being an artist and designer. And I also had a hard time charging. But I think it took many years to finally be like, that's why I went back and I said earlier, know your worth. Sometimes I feel like we don't know our worth. And sometimes we're afraid to ask for what we deserve, right? We deserve to be paid what we feel is fair to ourselves. I'm actually going to throw this out there. It just came to my mind. My dad told me years ago, my dad was a 7-figure earner, okay? And he said, my dad's like, you should be making 6 figures. And I remember getting mad. And I was like, Dad, designers don't make more than 50,000 a year. Like, I'll be lucky if I make that. He's like, no, you make what you make because someone told you that's what you should make and you believe them. And I remember being really upset when he said that to me. He was like telling me like, no, you make that because you believed it, but that's not what you should make. You have every right to make more. And so hopefully think about that. You make what you make because someone told you should make that, but you set the value on yourself. Don't let someone else set that value for you.
Yeah, I love that point. You get to decide. Yeah. And it's hard to like tie your worth to money because it can be uncomfortable, but right, like you get to decide what you need to live a fulfilling life. And I think part of living a fulfilling life is being financially secure and being able to do the things that make you happy. So right, you get to decide what you charge, how much you're willing to put into it and to see what pays off. I can't be a good therapist if I'm worried about money, if I'm worried about finances. And that's what I tell, my other therapist friends who might be charging less or really want to raise their fees. I just kind of remind them like, I can't show up as my best self if that's something that I'm worried about. So I don't think we should feel bad charging our worth.
Thank you so much, Abby, for sharing today. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate you being willing to kind of give us some of your tips on how you were able to successfully grow your practice and be consistent over the last 3 years.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
I hope you got a lot of value out of Abby's story about using SEO to gain about 90% of her practice. I really hope that you continue to find value in future clinicians that we bring on to the Kli'nishen's Atelier. If you would love to share your story, I'm looking always to hear how you've grown your practice through different marketing strategies and ways to inspire others that are starting or those that may be struggling, how they can grow their practice. Obviously, we're already seeing a theme in just these couple of episodes about niching and figuring out your vision and what works for you. If you haven't followed us, you can follow us on Instagram. You can join our free marketing group. You can also go to our website at theklinishenatelier.com. All of the links are in the body of our podcast. Hope to stay connected.